Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about my favorite subject, which is diversity of the little tiny animals that spend their entire life drifting with the ocean currents. And the story that I'd like to tell you today is about the hidden diversity of these animals. Despite more than a century since the Challenger expedition of sampling the open ocean, we still know almost nothing about what lives there. And you may not believe that because you think, well, we've been working for decades sending vessels out into the open ocean, but in fact there's still an enormous amount yet to be learned. And it's my pleasure to continue in this effort, I must say. I call myself a biological oceanographer, and I've spent quite a bit of time at sea. I'm still counting all the different ocean basins that I've been to. I think I've only got one more. And I'll tell you some favorite places that I've been during the past few decades. But the story really is one of discovery. And it's discovery of the little tiny things that we frequently overlook. So marine zooplankton are animals that there are about 7,000 described species. Those species span some 15 different phyla, the major groups of animals. There are 35 different phyla, so 15 of them are found among the marine zooplankton. It's a very complicated assemblage, and because things are so little, it takes an expert to discriminate species. So into this difficult world of zooplankton, people have looked for a number of years and come up with a few basic principles. And I can summarize them, and of course I'm going to tell you that they're wrong in a few minutes, but I can summarize them by telling you that one of them is everything is everywhere. And so one of the curious attributes of marine zooplankton is that one species seems to be found everywhere, pole to pole, every ocean basin. You can't believe it. How can one species be found? You might remember that species have to interbreed in order to remain species, otherwise they'll separate and speciate. And so how can it be that one species is found throughout the entire ocean? Another truism, actually, which we do think is going to last, is that everything is rare. And so when you sample the ocean, you may find only one or two, which makes, of course, the task of understanding marine biodiversity even more difficult. And then there's a very curious attribute of marine zooplankton, which is what we call the local to global biodiversity ratio. But what does that mean? If you take a plankton net tow anywhere in the ocean, you'll catch anywhere in the ocean almost, this is not quite true, but almost anywhere in the ocean, you'll catch hundreds of species of a kind of zooplankton we call copepods. Copepods are relatives of little shrimps, and they're among the groups that has the most species in the ocean. So about 2,200 species of copepods are found throughout the whole global ocean. If you take a net tow, one net tow, you're going to find hundreds. The ratio of local to global diversity is about 10%. That's weird. How can that happen? That everything is everywhere, and anywhere you go, you catch almost everything, or 10% of everything. So oceanographers have thought, well, that's because the open ocean is homogeneous and unstructured. So everything can float everywhere. And species can coexist because they can partition their niche in some way. They can have slightly different food, they can have slightly different predators. And so all these species happily coexist in one little body of water, one little net tow, and they're found everywhere in the ocean. Okay, so now, of course, I'm about to tell you that we're looking more closely at those patterns, and in fact, some of it's true and some of it's probably not true. And so I've been very lucky to participate in what I call the molecularization of oceanography. Starting some 20 years ago, we adopted almost all of the biomedical molecular approaches to DNA sequencing and analysis of genes, and started using them on marine organisms. And so what we started doing very early on was to identify one gene and start to sequence everything we could find for that one gene. And that became known as the barcode gene. So you know what barcodes are in the grocery store. You know, you can't read them, but they're a hidden code that tells you exactly what that can of beans is and where it came from. Okay, so the DNA barcode is a DNA sequence, and it's that same hidden code. It tells you what that is, where it came from, and what it's related to. Okay, so we started sequencing a gene called the mitochondrial cytochrome oxidase 1 gene. You don't need to know about that, but the CO1 gene is a magic barcode. It has a characteristic that the within species diversity is really small, and the between species diversity is really big. And so you have between those two what we call a barcode gap. Doesn't matter the details, what it means is you can sequence this gene, and it's a barcode that'll tell you what that species is and what it's related to. Okay, so now we started barcoding everything we could find. Didn't matter what it was. And it turns out that we can do a pretty good job of barcoding almost everything in the ocean assemblage, all across those 15 phyla, all across those 7,000 species. Right now, I think we're at about 2,500 species barcoded. And the trick of this is that before we analyze the sequence of this bug, we get a taxonomist to tell us what the name is. And it's really hard because taxonomy now is a vanishing art. No one likes to look at bugs through the microscope, count their little legs, and put a name on it. But there are some people who are exceptionally good at this. And in fact, there's some now, for some groups, there's only one person remaining who actually knows how to put names on bugs by looking at the morphology. Okay, and so now what we did was we asked those expert taxonomists to sit with us, go to sea with us, collect the animal with us, and put a name on it. And then we went in and barcoded it, and now we call that a gold standard barcode. And this library of barcodes that attach a name of a species, a bug, and an image now, we now call a Rosetta Stone. It's the key to understanding marine biodiversity when we can no longer count on having those morphological taxonomists around to tell us what the name is. Now we can sequence it and say, oh, we know what that name is. It's this. And so we've now been doing that for some 20 years and accumulating this barcode library. And I can tell you that we're starting to address questions like, how many species are there? Well, there are more than we thought there were. And is everything everywhere? No, actually. They're different. We just can't tell them apart. They're cryptic species, but in fact, they're found in restricted ocean regions, so everything isn't everywhere. Everything is rare. We took this integrated molecular morphological taxonomic approach to understanding marine biodiversity to one of the last unexplored, one of the great unexplored areas of the world. You might know that 88% of the ocean is deeper than 1 kilometer. You might know that 76% of the ocean is deeper than 3 kilometers. And so what we did was to go to the deep Sargasso Sea, 5,000 meters deep, and ask the question, what lives down there? And the way we did this was to design a specially rigged, very large plankton net. Think of a 10 square meter plankton net with very fine mesh so we can catch the little guys. And remember, you're sending the net down to the bottom of the sea, 5,000 meters, which means you need to put 10,000 meters of wire out to get down to the bottom of the ocean with your net, far behind the ocean, far behind the ship. And so if you want an analogy, imagine that you're flying a butterfly net, because you want to know what the butterflies are, and it's a great big net, and it's 6 miles of rope, and then you're reeling it in, and you got to see what it is. And what we were amazed at, we brought up animals from 5,000 meters down, the bottom of the Sargasso Sea, and they were alive. And you have never seen, you never go to sea alone, I always say. When you're an oceanographer, you have lots of friends. You're going to go to sea with them. And the whole ship went completely nuts, because you're seeing animals no one has ever seen before. There's no name, they're not known to science, and you're looking at them alive, and they came from the bottom of the ocean. And then, of course, we killed them. But because we wanted to photograph them alive, we tried to put names on them and we barcoded them, and we've continued now for that continued exploration, especially in the deep sea. So in closing, I'd like to just say that there are many adventures, and being an oceanographer is certainly a wonderful adventure. We've only just got tiny little snapshots of what the deep sea looks like. We have certainly no idea how many species there really are in the plankton or in the ocean. Especially we don't know what the diversity of the deep sea looks like. And what we say is that in terms of the unknown, it's still many orders of magnitude larger than the known. So there are many more adventures out there, and I look forward to joining at least some of them. Thank you for listening.